We left in our last session Jacob at Bethel, where he met with God again. And we continue now in Genesis 35, verses 16 to 21. And they journeyed from Bethel, and there was but a little way to come to Ephrath. And Rachel travailed, and she had hard labor. And it came to pass when she was in hard labor that the midwife said to her, "Fear not, thou shalt have this son also." And it came to pass as her soul was in departing, for she died, that she called his name Benoni, but his father called him Benjamin. And Rachel died and was buried in the way to Ephrath, which is Bethlehem. And Jacob set a pillar upon her grave, that is the pillar of Rachel's grave, unto this day. And Israel journeyed and spread his tent beyond the tower of Edar. Whew! There's so much in these few verses. Let's see if we can unwrap this. You see, some time must have passed between verses 15 and 16. After all, God invited Jacob to come to Bethel and dwell there for a while, which he did. And then they journeyed from Bethel. They journeyed from Bethel, and there was but a little way to come to Ephrath, it says, and Rachel travailed. Folks, she had hard labor. How long Jacob and his family stayed there, we really don't know. But some commentaries say that Jacob stayed at Bethel for 4 months. 4 months. Then they traveled about 20 kilometers from Bethel, arriving just short of Ephrath. And that is known as Bethlehem. In Micah, it talks about Rachel weeping for her children in Bethlehem Ephratah. Well, that is the two names, Bethlehem and Ephrath. Bethlehem, by the way, means the house of bread. Interesting. Rachel was pregnant and having numerous contractions until she went into a hard labor, forcing an emergency stop. Yes, they had to stop right there. It was on the road to Bethlehem where they had to stop. And Rachel's labor pains came upon her very sharp and severe. Oh, she had such a difficult time of it that her midwife said to her, "Fear not, you shall have this son also." You see, it seems that perhaps this midwife might have been one that was always kept in the family. Remember, Jacob had a big entourage, and this midwife must have been part of that. She must have been assisting in all of Jacob's wives and concubines in their labors. It can safely be concluded that this is the case from what she said. What did she say? "Fear not, thou shalt have this son also." See, as Rachel before, she said, "The Lord shall add to me another son," when in her first delivery. And therefore she called his name Joseph. And that was found in Genesis 30:24. But this is the midwife. The midwife would have remembered and tried to comfort her during extremely difficult delivery. But then we come across a remarkable way of stating that a person was dying. It says here, and it came to pass as her soul was in departing. Of course, she died. Her soul here uses the Hebrew word nephesh. Nephesh. Which, in case you didn't know Hebrew, which incorporates the person himself, the person, the individual. That is actually the individual person who separates. Folks, is not this a proof that there is an immortal spirit in each person, which can exist separate from and independent of the body? You see, of Rachel's death, it is said in Hebrew literally, Betseth Nafsha, which incorporates, which in English actually translates, in the going away of her nephesh. Her body did not go away. Wow. Therefore, her soul and body must have been distinct. Here is the doctrine that that our body has a spirit that God infused in us. If her breath only had been intended, they would say, well, she breathed her last ruach, which is breath. She breathed her last. But it didn't. It said, as her spirit was leaving her body. Wow. So at what age she died, it isn't told us. But it is estimated that she died after Jacob had lived with her for about a quarter of a century. Some people put it at exactly 23 years. 23 years of having known the love of his life. So as she lay dying, she named the boy born to her Benoni. Do you know what that means? It means son of my sorrow, or son of my affliction. Oh man, that would be a horrible name to have. So Jacob renamed him Benjamin, son of my right hand, signifying a son peculiarly dear to him. In the book of Psalms, several times God talks about the son of my right hand. Well, meaning you are so dear to me. And that's what it meant here. And then Rachel died and was buried in the way or on the road to Bethlehem. And Jacob set a pillar upon her grave. And Moses tells us here that is the pillar of Rachel's grave to this day. And that's about 500 years later. This pillar no longer marks that spot, but the site of her tomb is really a major hotspot in fighting between Islam and Judaism. The Israelites and the so-called Palestinians to this day. And it has been a fighting point between Islam and Judaism for at least 14 centuries, 1,400 years. Rachel's tomb. And we still hear it in the news today. How in Bethlehem terrorist fights occur. See, now Jacob set a pillar upon her grave. This may have perhaps been the origin of funeral monuments to loved ones. In ancient times, a heap of stones designated the burial place of a chief or a ruler. But Jacob used this to mark a spot for his principal choice of wife, Rachel, ruler and queen of his heart. Folks, it isn't known how long Jacob, also called Israel, lingered there in his grief. But then Israel journeyed and spread his tent beyond the Tower of Edar. This was a place fit for keeping his flocks, about 2 kilometers south of Bethlehem, or perhaps 1.5 miles. And supposedly the place where the shepherds were watching their flocks when the angel reported to them at the birth of Jesus in Luke 2, verse 6. The rest is incredible history. The Tower of Edar is a natural outcropping, a big rock from where you could see around about and keep watch over your flock. No wonder he moved there. But now, see how God ties all history together like that? And I look across this incredible expanse of history. Have you ever, like I did, wondered where we would fit into all this? After all, another name for history is his story. And doesn't the Holy Spirit live in us?